Hey, you came back this week. Okay then, let's speak more geek. This is the Geek Speak Show. Get ready to speak geek. Featuring interviews with the movers and shakers in geek culture.
Hi, I'm Chris Hardwick.
I'm Ralph Bakshi.
Hey, this is Todd McFarlane.
I'm Zach Whedon. Hi, this is Georges Genti.
The Geek Speak Show is powered by GeekTyrant.com, GameTyrant.com, MightyVille.com, RamaScreen.com, and ZergNet.com. Geek is spoken here.
They're listening. You're consuming. You're watching it with your ears. Oh, just listen.
Here are the hosts of the Geek Speak Show, Henry San Miguel and Rachel Rossilli. Okay, so you can tell by the music what we're going to do, that and the fact that we talked about it all last week. Welcome to the Geek Speak Show. Of course you do. Welcome to the Geek Speak Show, the special show. Okay, Rachel, we'll do it. Star Wars versus Star Trek, although it's really Star Trek versus Star Wars. And we've all been into darkness, all been in, and came out of it as into conness. We'll get into spoilers. That's a warning there at the end of the show. But this is, we're not going to do, we have lightsabers, you have the Millennium Falcon, I have the Enterprise, we're not going to get into that. Maybe. We'll try not to. We'll try to keep it on topic. But
it happens sometimes, but
Yeah, those of you who were there a couple months ago, it feels like years ago, but it was just a couple months ago at WonderCon Anaheim 2013. On Friday was a very cool, very fun panel called The Psychology of Star Trek versus Star Wars, and two doctors, real doctors, they actually play them in real life. They were there on the panel along with other experts, and they talked about the psychology behind Star Trek and Star Wars, how they handle villains, how they handle artificial intelligence, things like that. We were in the audience. Rachel kept turning to me and said, this, no, that, making her points there, and she kept talking about it all Friday, and I said, you know what, why don't we do it on the show? And she thought about it.
And of course, I was sold.
You thought about it for 2 nanoseconds and said, let's do it. The panel, the two real doctors are Dr. Ali Matsu, and he takes the Trek side, and Dr. Andrea Letamendi, and she's on with Rachel because they've become the best of friends. Even though I got to tell you, though, Rachel, you guys can follow her at Arkham Asylum Doc. Andrea, welcome to the Geek Speak Show. She is actually a big fan of the dark side.
Hey,
I am.
We all like both. The point is, which side do we take? And she happens to be on my side.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to be on your show today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And like I said, on the Trek side, usually for the panel is Dr. Ali Matsu, and he'll probably do it again if they do it at Comic-Con. And we did invite him, but I said, you know what? Let me bring the big photon torpedoes. And I said, who better to be on here than J.J. Abrams? But he was a little busy.
Whatever, he would be on my side.
So, well, in a couple of years maybe. So I said, the next best thing, Roddenberry. The name Roddenberry and Star Trek are synonymous with each other, obviously. So you've heard him on before many times. Rod Roddenberry back on the Geek Speak Show. Hey, Rod, welcome back.
Hey guys, it's great to be here. I'm glad you could settle for me.
We never settle for you. It's always fun having you here. So
good.
Like I said, Rod and I will take the Trek side. Drea and Rachel will take the Star Wars side. And, it may turn into what it is on the panel. We have lightsabers, but we have lightsabers. If it does, it does. But we're gonna try to stay on topic. So let's get right into it. Yeah, some of these questions came from you guys. Thanks for that. You can, and also you're gonna be involved again afterwards. We're gonna post it up. We're gonna leave it there. We're not gonna decide who won, who didn't win, even though at WonderCon Star Trek won, right, Rachel?
No.
They cheated.
That's not even fair.
And that was even with most of us at work, as somebody said in the beginning of the panel. No, but you guys, listeners, you guys can listen to it. Rod, you tweeted out. Drea, you tweeted out. Rachel, all of us, all our listeners, let them know that it's there. We'll take your votes and say, hey, you guys made good points for the Star Trek side, for the Star Wars side. We'll tally them up. Actually, we'll have Joel. He's not even here today, but we'll have him go ahead and do it.
And then we'll have a ceremony on Yavin 4.
Yeah, and give it to
I definitely think
Rod.
there were better people to get, at least when it comes to me, as far as defending these shows, because I like them both, but we'll see how this comes out.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into it. So the first one, is which of the universes has the better villains?
See, go ahead, Rod. Tell us what you think.
No, it depends on, there's the two main differences between Star Trek. Well, there's many, but at least when it comes to villains, there's black and white villains. There's just the bad guy. There's evil, using the dark side of the Force. But then there can also be the bad guy that you empathize with. I keep going from, let's just say Vader, who I will admit in Jedi, there was good within him. So I don't want to make him just black and white, but he was pretty much just evil. I'm going to jump to the Horta, which I'm not saying is my number one villain, but the Horta, in the end, you learn it's a mother protecting its young. So it starts off as the bad guy or the evil thing. But then you realize the devil in the dark was not the Horta. The devil in the dark was humanity. We were the ones that were attacking this thing without trying to understand what it was. And once we did that, we realized that we really weren't that different in terms of what we would do to protect our children. So best villains, I will definitely say, not because my father created it, but I will say Star Trek, because there's countless episodes and countless shows where there is depth. There are many dimensions to the bad guy. Q really wasn't that bad of a guy necessarily. I have to agree with Rod in the sense that the best villains are the ones that actually show elements of humanity. And this actually was a topic. Villains was one of the biggest topics from the panel. And I do have to say, just, full disclosure, that I know that there have been a lot of these sort of, Star Wars versus Star Trek battles where they go into the physics or astronomy or, various technologies. When it comes down to the psychology, when it comes down to comparing the psychological science of both franchises, they both actually do a really fantastic job of creating these really dynamic, very complex characters when it comes to villains. I would actually say, now we know that in Jedi, of course, Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader, for the most part in the original trilogy sort of represents, he's all in black, he's masked, he represents this, terrifying, just like Rachel was saying before the show, this horrific, terrifying villain. But I will mention that what the prequels gave us was this, developmental psychological backstory that tells us that actually this guy was born fairly kind and okay. He was, we see him as a kid and we see him growing up, and what made him into a villain was actually all this adversity, traumatic stressors, loss, death of people close to him. He lived in a world where it was unsafe. He lived in a world that was, to him, horrifying and terrifying and evil. And so he turned into this, this character that embodied that. And so I will say Star Wars, because, once you give us that backstory, then you see that there is this dynamic villain that does represent a realistic trajectory, a realistic development of evil.
Rachel, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Okay. So you guys went one side of that and a little deeper and whatever. I'm going to go a little bit more into the present day stuff. So the villains in both sides, both of them have pretty good ones. But all I have to do to make wars win is say Boba Fett. We have bounty hunters, and we have Darth Vader and Darth Maul and Admiral Thrawn. And if you go to any convention, even if it's the Big Wow Comic Fest that was just happening this weekend, there are so many Star Wars villains, more than there are anything else, I think, that people are dressing up as, that have the shirts as, that they say, this is my favorite. So if we're talking about better villains, we win.
I'll say cooler villains. Star Wars definitely has much cooler villains. I will give that. Yeah, absolutely. Darth Maul was a badass. There's not a single villain in Star Trek that I can think of that I would say is badass. So it really depends on which direction you're coming at this from. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go out with Rod, not just because he's on my team, but because I've always liked the Star Trek villains because of that. They've always had some sort of twist in them, and sometimes it makes us look at ourselves, because like Rod said with the Devil in the Dark episode, it forces us to look at us. Like, what are we doing wrong? We right away, just because we don't understand it or because it looks like a monster, it has to be bad, evil. But the reality is, like Rod said, it's only a mother protecting its young. And there's a lot of instances. Next Generation did that also. Voyager, not so much. It tried to. But that's the beauty of the Star Trek episodes, and not so much into the movies because they're different. But even Khan a little bit. If you look at it from his point of view, the original Khan, not the new one, there was a reason for his wrath. There was a reason for him hating Kirk so much, and it's because to him, he's protecting the people that he cared the most. He blamed them for the death of his wife and all of that. So it's a little deeper. The Star Trek villains go a little bit deeper, but for coolness, yeah, I'll give it to you, Rachel. Star Wars has the coolest ones.
All right. So up next, we have which universe has the better selection of weapons?
Oh.
So now that came from Rachel, and I got to say, I think it's unfair because when we hear that, how can you be cooler than that?
That's, well, the lightsaber, though. I mean, I'm trying to look at this objectively. The lightsaber is probably the most known weapon. I'd say even more than a phaser. But that's a really good question.
Well,
I was going to say, I'm thinking large scale. I'm thinking the biggest weapon there is, which is the Death Star. Now, we know that, Genesis can destroy planets, or can both destroy and create planets,
yep. Mm-hmm.
which is kind of, I have to say, maybe the superior weapon is the one that can both destroy and create planets. But I don't know that you can top the Death Star.
It's time saving too. Create and destroy.
Well, and better selection. So overall, so you can pull from everything.
Yeah, well,
what? Let's name them. It's a good question. I don't know what Star Wars has. The Death Star. It has a lightsaber. It's got the gun, laser gun. What else is there?
For Star Wars, the lightsabers. They have the what is it called, Rachel? The Tusken Raiders. The gaffy stick, I think it is called.
Yep, the gaffy stick. That's right. You have all sorts of different blasters and put together weapons from all of the bounty hunters.
Can we technically say the Rancor is a weapon because Jabba kind of used them like a weapon?
I think that's fair. I will take that one.
Okay.
I would also include, the astromech, any R2
electrical
droid.
shock.
Yeah, any kind of like Swiss Army version of having various weaponry.
And if we're going to use the Rancor, then we also have to use the Wookiee because,
Yes.
Well,
let the Wookiee win.
Yeah, now we're going a little too far. I think. Well, what does Star Trek have? We have the Phaser 1. We have the Phaser 2. I mean, they're both little phasers, I guess. Of course, we have the ships with photon torpedoes, and they're multiple sorts of different kinds of lasers. What else do we have in Star Trek?
You can put the phaser to overload and use it as a bomb.
Well, we can definitely keep going down that road. I don't know if self-destruct counts either, but now we're going to go a little crazy. Data is, I wouldn't call him a weapon, but I don't know. I would go with a draw on this one, but...
oh, wait, you forgot one. Vulcan Death Pinch.
Yeah,
there you go.
That counts.
We might have to refine the question on this one just to give us some stronger parameters.
Okay, let me ask it like this. Which weapon from either universe would you rather own?
Oh.
Well, I already own 10 lightsabers.
Well, I was going to say not a prop. I mean an actual functioning weapon.
Oh, you're right. A lightsaber you could use to cut bread and cheese, and it would to cut and toast it at the same time. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I was going to say we should say before you guys answer. No, before you guys answer, we should say this is just imagination. We wouldn't actually use the weapons for anything.
Although I might stun you, Henry, every once in a while if I had a phaser.
I like. You know what? I'm going to go with the phaser because you just said it. The fact that you can just stun people. I'm not just trying to be humane about it, but it would be fun at parties. It would be, it would be awesome. Just a light stun.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm sorry I'm crossing over to the other side, but that would be, I think, more convenient than a double-sided lightsaber is a little bit cumbersome to carry around.
There'd be accidents all over the place.
Exactly.
Well, just think if you're in the car and you break out your lightsaber, you don't realize that it's like longer than the roof and it puts a hole in the roof of your car. It's like just inconvenient at times.
Instant sunroof.
Yeah.
See, I'm still going to have to go with the saber, though, because I would, of course, practice and be a master at it, and then no one could really stop me. It'd be awesome.
Practice makes perfect. Till you go up against Drea and I. Dark side is always better. You know that. Like Rod said,
Henry, what about you?
What's that?
Which one are you picking?
I'm gonna go with the lightsaber too, but double-bladed lightsaber specifically.
Okay. I know I would just hurt myself with one of those. That's all.
Okay, so there's the weapons. Now, which universe has the better vehicles?
Wait, so do you mean vehicles or aircraft or spacecraft?
I don't know. That's a Rachel question. What do you mean specifically?
Well, I was going to leave it open to what we wanted to do. Generally, we go with spacecraft, and then if there's a regular vehicle that we wanted to throw in for extra points here and there, we could do that.
Yeah, because Star Trek doesn't really have land speeders. We have shuttlecraft, but that's about it.
Right. So we're going to go with spacecraft specifically, and then we can add in if we needed to.
Well, if you saw the new movie, I might jump in and say Star Trek, just because I feel like in the new movie there were cars, there were planes, there were cargo things. There's so many flying, hovering crafts in Star Trek now. But, I just can't recall everything in Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of looked like Coruscant at the end of Into Darkness, that thing they were jumping on. Yeah, but with Star Trek, you really only have the Enterprise and the rest of the ships and the shuttlecraft, and that's it. And
I don't mean to defend the other side here, but I mean, Enterprise is a pretty legit ship, so
yeah.
They have an entire Starfleet. They've got tons of ships. It sounds like I'm just defending Star Trek. I guess it's just because I've seen the movie recently. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Trying to think about Star Wars. Star Wars has, unless you read the fan fiction and the books and the comics, if you've only seen, well, we'll call it the 6 movies, but if you've only seen the 6 movies, you've got a limited pool to some degree.
Yeah.
Oh, they did have that really cool silver ship. Actually, what's the one that the princess had in the first movie?
The Naboo Royal Starship.
That was a pretty badass looking ship.
And you can fix your makeup on it too.
The Jedi starfighters are actually really awesome too. So if you go into all the different ones that they have, and even if you look at Episode 1, if we're talking about that, you have some droid ships that are pretty cool too.
No, you're right. You're right.
I don't want to sway the audience, but I think we're going to give it to Star Wars on this one, because all 4 of us, I think we can agree. How many of us would love to ride a speeder bike?
That's pretty cool.
I want to drive the Millennium Falcon.
Although, Rod, in LA traffic, I don't think we can actually do that, ride the speeder bike.
Yeah, right.
I was going to jump in and say the Sith speeder, Darth Maul's Sith speeder is a favorite of mine.
Yeah, speaking of LA traffic, just blow it out of the way. Get out of the way.
Exactly.
Okay, so again, didn't mean to sway you guys on that one, but there it is. So the next one is which of the two franchises, which one has had the biggest influence on humanity as a whole?
Oh, come on.
Oh.
But what sort of influence, though? Is this people dressing up in costume, or are you talking about positive impact?
Yeah, again, Rachel, that's one of yours.
Well, hey, so what I was basing this on was how many people say, Trek is my favorite show, favorite thing, or Wars is my favorite thing, or I own a bunch of stuff because I love it, or I went into film because of this, or things like that, influencing people's lives.
Yeah,
well, actually, Rod, not to interrupt you guys, but Rod, your dad and you actually have pretty good stories from astronauts about Star Trek. So you want to talk about that?
Oh.
Here's the difficulty I have with this question, is that if the question is how many people know about one of these things and are entertained by it and may own a prop or a costume or may go to conventions, I might actually give it to Star Wars, because I think Star Wars has a larger reach than Star Trek in terms of all the kids out there, in terms of all the adults, all the people who saw it in the 70s or late, whatever, 79. What was the first one? 79? Whatever.
77.
77. So I would almost give it, I'd say Star Wars has the largest reach, has the largest impact in terms of people knowing about it and thinking it's a cool movie. Star Trek, I think, has the deepest impact. I think that's the one that has, touched the lives and has influenced people to believe themselves and become things that they never thought they could. I'm not saying that's the only thing Star Trek does. Star Trek can just be entertaining as well. But, it's amazing how many people I've met from all over the world who have come up to me and said that Star Trek inspired me to do this or that, whether it's overcoming a handicap or seeing through a handicap or becoming an astronaut. The stories, I don't want to say that's impossible with Star Wars, but I've never heard that with Star Wars. So I'll definitely give that side of it to Star Trek.
Same here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree in the sense that it depends on what you mean by the impact. As far as a scientific impact, I think that Star Trek, definitely, takes that. As far as sort of numbers goes or fandom goes, I do feel like I run into more people that like Star Wars more. But it has to, I think that has to do with a lot of things. They're not, this goes back to the fundamental problem with comparing these two things just on a basic level, that in my mind, they represent, two different things when it comes to the impact on us or the impact on humanity. That I always felt like Star Wars was this, I always say Star Trek is about social psychology. Star Trek is about societies and worlds and how they work together. And we should be mindful of these things. Whereas Star Wars is sort of like the individual psychology. What is one person capable of? Thinking of Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker, or, any of these characters, that it really has to do with the individual psychology. And that can be particularly inspiring, which is why I think that sort of builds fans who doesn't want to hold a lightsaber and say that they can save the galaxy. Whereas, again, Star Trek has this more, I guess, public impact about, sort of forcing us to think about humanity and think about our future and think about how, sort of like Rod said, deeper issues that may be more realistic issues that is less of an escapism, I would say, than Star Wars is.
Star Trek is I want to let the rest of you talk, but I think Star Trek really is, that could be a future for us.
Right.
Some of us might be more pessimistic about who we are and what we're doing as a species. And believe me, I have my days of that as well. But it's not so far out of the realm of possibility that we could live in a future like that. I'm not saying it has to have Starfleet. I'm just saying we could be those better people, still making plenty of mistakes, but being willing to make those mistakes and learn from them. Star Wars, I don't mean to diminish it by calling it just entertainment, but I think you did say it pretty well just now. It is entertainment. It is more of a personal psychology. But for me, and this is going to sound like I'm Gene Roddenberry's son. So for me, Star Wars is fun, entertainment. I'm not sure you can come away with too much except for I want to do the right thing. I want to do the right, whatever right is.
Absolutely, which is why I think that Star Wars helps you forget and Star Trek makes you remember. And
well said.
and you can
Well put.
You can love both of them equally because of that, that difference.
I like that line. You're going to hear me say that line some point.
Yay!
I like that. Stolen.
That is very
totally
good.
Stolen.
Drea, that should be the next t-shirt on her universe.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
We'll tell
absolutely.
Ashley. She'll love it.
Oh, you were going to say,
I'm
Rachel?
go with. Well, so the Star Trek influence, I think that's influenced a lot of technology. To Rod's point, that something that we can see our world being in a short time. I think a lot of people that get into vehicles, that get into even writing, have Star Trek as a basis for a lot of things. So your points all kind of tie into that. But I do think that Star Wars influences more of the creatives than anything else. If you have artists and filmmakers and novelists and all of those, they all will say at some point that Star Wars influenced the way that they write or something that they do or a creative thing in them. So I think that influencing people as a whole, there's more creatives that have been influenced by that, and there's a lot of creative people. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can see that. So again, there's that one. Moving on to the next one now is which of the universes handles artificial intelligence better? That actually came from the panel, Andrea.
It did. I mean, I tend to think, of course, there's a whole bunch of literature and folks who are experts in AI. And when I talk about the difference between, artificial intelligence between Star Wars and Star Trek, I mainly refer to the psychological aspect, that when it comes to human interaction with artificial intelligence, which one deals with that relationship or the challenges better. And, if you take Star Wars, you have all these droids, cyborgs, humans and aliens sort of working together, all the diverse types of beings interacting. And interestingly, the droids are always distinctly robotic in appearance and in their presentation. And I'd like to think that Star Wars actually understands this theory of what people call the uncanny valley. And I mentioned this at the panel. The uncanny valley is, this scientific notion that comes from the fields of robotics and psychology, in that there's this idea that, human replicas like androids, when they start to act and look almost exactly as humans do, it actually creates this revulsion and disgust in terms of our emotional response, when it comes to human reaction to them. And so as a robot becomes more human, we as humans become increasingly sort of distant and disgusted by it. It's this sort of scientific phenomenon. So I'd like to think that, R2-D2 and C-3PO, of course, these are very, recognized machines. They're humanoid robots. At least C-3PO, of course, is a humanoid robot. So theoretically, we should have this sort of interactional or emotional response to him. But you take Data, and Data is almost too human. So I posited this at the panel, that Data being too human-like should sort of create this distance, and I'm confused as to why all the crew on the bridge and on the Enterprise are sort of interacting with him so normally. There should be more of a confusion and more of an emotional sort of like distancing with him, but we don't find that that's the case.
No, I think I know exactly what you're saying, and I've heard about that Valley comment before. I think the Star Wars one is sort of what we thought about robots in the 70s and 80s. We weren't really making the conclusions, well, at least that some of us are making now, where that robots are definitely going to be more android-esque, because we're going to start putting enhancements in ourselves. And I think we will be making robots. I think we are making robots already that are very humanoid. And I am concerned, though, what you said, that there will be a dark side in our future where there will be this, was it in AI? Oh, the actual movie AI, where they had this something of flesh, this carnival of flesh where they destroy. Totally. Yeah, so they take all these androids and they destroy them because they're scared of them. Also, I didn't read the book, but what's the Will Smith movie that came out 4 or 5, 6 years ago? iRobot. I loved that movie. I'm excited by this day that we're going to have robots that are humanoid. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I think we're just going to have to get over our prejudice, as we need to still get over our other prejudice right now. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one.
I think that, to kind of add to that, the one thing that, if anything, as far as being a Star Trek fan sort of later on in my life, that if you haven't seen Measure of a Man, you're definitely missing out, in the sense of, that's the Next Generation episode. It's called Measure of a Man. And it really talks about some sort of complex and important ideas that we have to think about. Like, what is artificial intelligence? What is it like to be self-aware? What are the requirements for consciousness? And Star Wars doesn't handle those things. Star Wars just sort of presents all these sort of like droids that beep and boop. And Star Trek really handles this idea of like, the closer we get to what Rod's talking about, the more we have to start to consider some of the consequences of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But Star Wars has so many more robots or droids or whatever you want to call them. Whereas Star Trek, I'm a little surprised. Someone mentioned this to me not too long ago, how few robots or androids are in the Star Trek future. I think it's a glaring hole. I think there's going to be a tremendous number of androids. I think it's going to be more like, AI or the other one that I keep forgetting the damn name.
iRobot.
Thank you.
Well, okay, so I agree with you guys. I feel like the way that Star Wars handles artificial intelligence, it's not a Data, right? It's a machine that's got a specific purpose and it does it well, and it's a machine that we take with us and we can leave behind and whatever, and it's all integrated. is something that probably what we're going to see. However, something like Data or a robot or an android that is bordering that line where we can't really tell if it's our friend or what its agenda is, or if it really can feel, right, which is the whole dilemma, it makes it to where the artificial intelligence, as the word itself, Star Trek kind of wins, because they have mastered the fact that now we're bordering that line. We can't really tell what it is. But if we're using it to our advantage and focusing each thing to do its own job and having more, and we can separate that, I feel like Wars wins.
Yeah. There was a really neat psychological test that was done. I guess Jonathan Knowles, a friend of mine, told me about this, where they had created this puppy, literally a puppy. It looked like a puppy. It was a robot, obviously, but it looked like a puppy and whined like a puppy and barked and stuff like that. And they said, okay, they brought people into the room and say, okay, now pet it, hold it. And the puppy would respond to certain things that the people would do. Then they said, crush it. Put it on the ground and crush it. And people couldn't do it. It was a robot, but it looked like a puppy. And when you would crush it, it would whimper and scream. And people couldn't do that. The psychology, like you say, is just going to be amazing when that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have people on both sides, extreme both sides, who are trying to protect these androids who really won't have feeling. And then there's going to be people who are on the other side who think they're an abomination and need to get rid of them, kill them all. It's going to be interesting and possibly quite scary.
And that's what could be our undoing, is our general, concern of, even though it's a robot, I can't kill that. I can't destroy something. And maybe that's a scary thing.
And then the big question, which we shouldn't get into here, is, what is life? When that android has such a complex program that it is interpreting, just like our bodies are programs and they're biological machinery. They respond to stimulus. When you've got that sort of detail in a robot that is responding to stimulus with the same sort of way, what is it? Consciousness? Is it self-awareness? I mean, we're just programs, kind of. So that's a great topic, so far beyond me. I'd like to hear people talk about that.
Henry?
Well, see, I was going to say that's going to be a hard one for all of you guys, the listeners, to decide on who you want to give it to. Because, for this one, I'm going to revert back to my preteen years when I first saw Star Wars and Star Trek, as first started getting into it. The way I saw AI, I didn't even know it was called AI, but the way I saw it then, droids, robots, is like Rodda mentioned, there weren't that many robots on Star Trek. I mean, Spock can kind of be considered, he's very robotic, but he's not an actual robot. But the way I saw it is Star Wars handles droids more, they treat them more like our maid. They're just there to help us. 3PO, Goldenrod, he's just there to help fix the Falcon. Once that's fixed, get out of the way. R2, same thing. They like him, and they kind of treat him like the pet. They still can't. They don't want to see him get destroyed, or when he gets blown up in Empire, they feel bad because who's going to help me fix the ship? That's the real reason why they're worried about it, because now Han and Chewie have to do all the work. They don't have 3PO to help. Star Trek, I've seen him handle the few robots that are in the episodes and everything that as part of us. We try to treat them as equals, and I like that about the Star Trek universe, is that that's kind of the whole message of Star Trek, the series, is let's work together to move forward, to progress into the future, whatever that is, whatever we're going to be. Let's do it together instead of still having the same. He's just helping me out. So for this one, that's why I want to give it the Trek on the AI question.
All right. So next question is, which universe has influenced today's filmmakers the most?
Well, wait, before we answer that one, I was actually going to skip that one because you kind of answered that one. So I would go with Star Wars, unless you guys, Drea and Rod, against you guys want to jump in on that one also.
Yeah, no, I just actually, not to backtrack too much, there's one more episode, Measure of a Man. Next Generation, Season 6, Episode 9, The Exocomps is another good episode. I can't remember the name of it, where they kind of they battle with that question, what is life? And, when is a machine just a machine? So, sorry.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Fair. It's fair. And just to do my due diligence for Rachel, don't forget that in Star Wars, you may not have good representations of artificial intelligence, but you have good representations of artificial biology with
Yes.
General Grievous and Darth Vader. You see these cyborgs. So
Oh,
sort of
very-
the combination of human biology and, cybernetics and cyborgs. And I think that both Darth Vader and General Grievous, who sadly is not, I wish we just had more of General Grievous because he's such a fascinating character. You do have this interesting and successful, for the most part, representation of how robotics and human biology can work together. And if that's a good start, hell, why not move
I
towards?
overlooked that. Well, I'm so glad you pointed it out. Thank you. And his hands. Sorry, not Han Solo, but Luke Skywalker's mechanical hand.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, go ahead.
Everybody always forgets about Lobot. He's kind of an android too.
I know. I was gonna say Lobot. Poor guy.
All right. So
right.
no real answer on that one, huh?
No, that was a good one. I mean, I think that was Rachel. Was that one of yours, or was that a listener one? Don't remember.
That one was mine.
Okay, so good one there. So again, like I said, the next one was which universe has influenced today's filmmakers the most. Rachel, you kind of answered that one already. That being Star Wars. I mean, do you guys want to jump in on that one again, or do you agree with Rachel?
Yeah, I think that if I can defer to Rod, there has to, he actually made this documentary, Trek Nation, that goes into sort of the inspiration of Star Trek and why fans, have been so dedicated. And I can't imagine that doesn't, kind of expand to reach artists and creators and writers and producers and folks who are in the entertainment industry. So I'm not in the position to really comment on that, but I have to imagine that there is, in terms of that creative content, that there is some inspiration there.
Oh, and there is, and I totally will defend that. However, I'm saying if you lined them up and you asked them, the majority would say Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I propose
go.
to this conversation, this show that we're doing here, that there is a section in Trek Nation where, and that's for obvious reasons, one of my favorite parts. I'm sure you doing it was your favorite, Rod, is when you actually get to talk to the father of Star Wars, George Lucas, and he gives his view on. Well, go ahead, you talk about it, Rod.
No, he was very complimentary. When we reached out to him, we never thought we'd get him, but someone on his team responded and said he'd be delighted to do it. And of course, they said, but he only has 20 minutes. So we're like, okay, no, that makes sense. He's in the middle of making the third movie. So we got out there. The minute we sat down with them, I think he was very hesitant. He didn't know what I was going to approach him with. I could just be Gene Roddenberry's son trying to corner him and tell him how bad Star Wars was. But the minute we sat down and started talking, he ended up giving us, about 45 minutes. And it was just a great conversation. And he was nothing he said sounded like necessarily sound bites or one-liners that he was just feeding me. It was a great conversation. He came off very genuine. There was one question that I really was hoping for a more powerful answer on. I think we're all searching to understand who we are, and whether it's later in life and we're figuring out on our own, or earlier in life when you're looking at your parents and wondering what it was about them and how they influenced you. I was hoping that Star Wars and his vision of Star Wars reflected on him and his father and his mother. And he I don't want to say evaded the question. He didn't really go down that road because, well, I don't know why he didn't go down, but I'm wondering. He says the son redeems the father. That's what he said to us a couple of times. And I'm wondering, what in his life might have happened, if anything. It may not have been anything. It might have just been a simple father and son thing. But I was really interested.
What influenced it?
What influenced it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I caught that on Trek Nation where again, same with Rod. I don't want to say he evaded the question, but he just gave a quick answer, and he actually referred to his own son. My son loves Star Wars and all that. And I didn't think it was, he was trying to insult you or anything, because that's kind of, you talked about it before. What you were doing Trek Nation for is to find out about your dad through the fans.
Right. Yeah. And sorry, not to plug, but in June or July, we're going to be releasing the last DVD of Trek Nation that came out. was something we rushed out for Comic-Con, and it really didn't have any extras. We went into a studio and we quickly did some director producer commentary, which probably wasn't that good. Anyhow, we've been since working on it, and we've got tons of extra footage. We've got we cut down Lucas's interview to a full 25 minutes to take out all the crap, and then Seth MacFarlane and a number of other people. So, sorry, off topic. Look for that DVD. It's going to be a double disc. There's a lot of great extra stuff. Sorry. Okay, back to the question.
No, plug away. I'll say definitely, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely go out and get it. Star Trek fan or not, is just a phenomenal documentary.
Awesome. What's the question again?
Yeah, what were we talking about? Which?
I actually had a question, but I don't want to derail the one conversation we're on right now.
Well, go ahead, throw it out.
Okay, so here's my question for you guys and the fans out there. And I'm still figuring out how to ask this. So if you needed to follow a leader into space or on a ship or into battle, out of Solo, Skywalker, Picard, Kirk, and all the other captains, and you could open up all the other characters as well, Vader, if you want to follow him, which one would you follow and why? If someone had to be the leader of your ship or the leader of your team, who would it be?
I would pick Obi-Wan.
Oh.
Obi-Wan would be my leader. Because he's been through everything. He's been through so much crap. He went through the military section with the Clone Wars. He went through all the emotional stuff with having to deal with Anakin and his children. He went through pulling away from everything he knew and loved and letting it all go and hiding away just to make sure that he redeemed his last mission, which was to make sure that Luke was okay and to bring back something of the Jedi. And as a general and as a Jedi master, when he led, he was very logical. He had the greater good in mind, but he cared enough about his people to let the exceptions go. And so if I was going to follow someone, it would be him, because even if I had to make a decision that went against whatever it was that we were doing, I know that I could give him the reason why, and that it would be redeeming, that he would still say, you did the right thing.
Well, wouldn't that be kind of creepy, though? I mean, you're taking a shower, all of a sudden he appears. Obi-Wan, what are you doing in here?
You know what? If it's the younger one, I wouldn't really mind.
Oh.
There you go. Who's
Andrea,
next?
How about you?
This may be surprising, but I actually would go with Picard. I just feel safer with Picard.
It's the accent, right?
It is. It's that he has, again, just sort of putting on the psychology hat again, he has both a combination of sort of this resiliency and strength and control and power, but he also has that emotional piece that he's willing to go to bat for you. At the end of the day, he will protect you. And I don't know that I can say that for, a lot of characters from either universes. I feel that he is, to me, the safest, the most rational. He would, if I had the opportunity to captain my own ship, he would approve and be very respectful and let me go. But at the same time, if I made the decision to stick to it and be at his side on his ship, we would have a very, very appropriate professional relationship, but also one that I feel would be very validating and very exciting. So I don't know. I'm going to go with Picard on this one.
Rod, how about you?
Well, you took it. I was going to let you guys all answer. Who just spoke, Drea or Rachel?
That was Drea.
Oh, Rachel, what was your thought? Oh, you went for Obi-Wan.
I had Obi, yes.
All right. Well, Henry.
Well, mine, I've said it many times on the show. Mine, it would be Captain James T. Kirk, because, as a little kid, that's who I wanted to be more than Luke Skywalker. I mean, I like that, when he sits in that chair, he is the Enterprise. He you want to follow him, and if he says go through that wormhole, we'll go through that wormhole. Who cares on the other side? I'll take on the Gorn. We'll take on the Gorn, even if he just gets some dust and whatever kills him that way. That's who I want to be, because kind of like Drea mentioned with Picard, he has a little bit of both. He has the superhuman. Not that he is he flies or anything. It's no superpowers, but he has the superhuman elements about him. But he's also human at the same time, and he balances those perfectly in whatever the situation calls for. So that's why I would go with Captain Kirk.
Okay, yeah, my answer is not exciting because I'm a Picard guy as well. I would feel safer and I would trust Picard to delegate and listen to the people he's delegated to and search for a diplomatic solution, even though that's not necessarily great sci-fi and can be boring sometimes. Real life, I would rather be on Picard's ship than especially Kirk's, and I don't know, Han Solo is also too much of a cowboy for me, so.
I love that about him.
Well, he's fun to watch. Don't get me wrong. Love Han Solo to watch. I'm glad I'm doing it on the other side of the TV screen.
Plus, he's a scoundrel. You don't know if he's gonna, give you up or what's he gonna do.
I wouldn't bring my women near any of them except maybe Picard. Jesus.
Yes.
That's a great question. I love it.
So we're gonna start wrapping it up here. These last ones are from you guys, actually, from all your listeners. A few of you. And you've had these conversations. I've seen them. I've heard them at conventions. Mm-hmm. And that is, which universe has benefited more from retellings? And for Star Wars, that would include the special editions, the prequels. For Star Trek, obviously JJ's 2009 and Now Into Darkness. So which one of these universes has benefited from retellings of the stories?
It's a really good question. No idea.
This one's not fair because I have to give it to Trek, and everyone's going to hate me for that. But as much as I love the prequels, because I do, and I will defend them to everyone, the new Star Trek,
Even episode 1?
I love episode 1, and you know that. Yes, I love all of them. But the new Star Trek has brought a whole lot more people into liking Star Trek or admitting it and all of that. Than the prequels did. The prequels brought in a new generation, the younger generation. It tied it in where they started watching Clone Wars and brought all of them in. But I personally know more people that now will say, yes, I like Star Trek, where they would have never before because of the J.J. Abrams movies. Whereas the prequels, I'm always defending Star Wars of them. So, yeah.
I can't answer that, guys. I need to think a bit more. Someone else has got to answer.
Drea, jump in.
Yeah, I think it's tough because, here we start talking about the new Star Trek movies. And I think that there's this sort of like cyclical sort of, I guess, pattern with Star Trek where, Star Trek has been around longer. We have these characters that just must stay in the narrative. And so sadly, I say sadly because those of us who know some of the Star Trek stories, sometimes the stories are being revisited and re-envisioned. And some fans really like that and feel, sort of satisfied and nostalgic about it, and they're enjoying the last couple of films. Some folks are ready for new stories and new adventures. And I think that Star Wars, if I can say, is better at this in creating new stories and giving us more backstories, more histories, more development, but not retelling relationships and stories that we kind of already know about, to the point where some of the same quotes and some of the same scenarios are being reused. And again, some people love this sort of, it absolutely respects and glorifies and honors these, very important characters from Star Trek and the very important relationships they had. But, I'm very much sort of wanting more creative relationships and stories. These original stories existed. We know where to find them. They are fantastic in their original form. Let's have some newness and creativity.
Rod, are you ready? I'm going to jump in.
No, I mean, I don't have much on this because I'm really struggling. Star Trek until these new movies really was I certainly don't want to say withering audience, but the people who are diehard Trek fans are in their 30s and 40s and 50s and plus, and it's been really hard for Star Trek to get the younger audience. These new movies, I haven't paid attention to the numbers. I don't know what they're doing. I think these new movies are doing a lot for bringing in a younger audience. The question is, what are they bringing this new audience into? Are they bringing them into a Star Trek that is more like Star Wars and therefore doesn't have the same social impact as the original series did? Or are they bringing them in, and are they causing these kids, I'll call them, to go back and look at the other shows and actually get somewhat influenced or inspired? So I don't know is the answer. I don't know. I hope Star Trek is bringing the people in, but what is it bringing them into? I'm curious about that. Yeah,
I'm on board with that one also. And Andrea, what you were saying also is that it's a fun movie, really fun movie. Both of them, Into Darkness and the original, the 2009 Star Trek. The prequels, they didn't take away or add anything. They just made the fans that were already there. They made them bigger fans. And the new, like my son, he was only 3 or 4 at the time. He loves even more because he got to experience, going to midnight screenings and everything with Dad. So it didn't really change the story too much. The Star Trek, like Rod was just saying, and Rod, I think you and I a long time ago when no, I'm not gonna go there. No, then the galaxy far, far away. But when we first started the show back in 2010, I think it was, when you first came on to talk about Trek Nation, the 2009 Star Trek had just come out, and we talked about that actually at the end. That it was a fun movie, like I said, but it didn't speak to us. Well, me especially as a real diehard Star Trek fan from the original. That wasn't the same Kirk that I was used to. At the very end, when they decided to just fire everything at Nero and instead of offering him help or whatever, that's not the Kirk we remember. And I know that's part of the marketing. It's not your dad's Star Trek, but like you said, Rod, and I agree completely with that. Is what are you giving them? What kind of Star Trek are you giving this new audience? Is it a Star Wars like Star Trek, or is it going to be a new Star Trek? Because a lot of the things that were touched on in the original series, Next Generation, most of the series, and most of the following series, and some of the movies, but mainly the TV series, a lot of that stuff, technology included, has become reality. And with Star Wars, and we're still waiting for the lightsabers and everything, but most of the stuff in Star Trek has become reality. And so, what are the movies going to give you? Is it just going to be a fun popcorn movie, or will there be messages? And whoever, because I'm sure JJ probably won't be able to do the next one because of Star Wars, whoever takes it on, how do you balance for the studios bringing in the audience but not boring them when they're in there? I'm with you. And here, if I could just jump in with what I hope the new movies will do based on what I've seen and what I'm taking out of them is I've given, oh God, forgiveness is not the right word. I really liked both movies. I really genuinely liked both movies. The issues that I had with the first one, which were relatively minor, and I'm very forgiving. I'm just not diehard, and I'm not going to pull any of these movies apart until I can deliver a script to them that's better than theirs. So I got to put my money where my mouth is, and right now I know I can't do that. So I got to give the writers tremendous credit for both movies. The first one, it took me a while, but I got it. It's a young Kirk and a young Spock, and I know that sounds obvious, but they're brash. They're making impulsive decisions. They're not always making the right decisions. They're willing to they're willing to shoot all the torpedoes. This last one, it was a real development of their characters, where the whole movie was that way. Pike was chastising Kirk right at the beginning, saying, you're doing things you don't think the rules apply to you. And through this last movie, I think sort of matured, not just as a Starfleet officer, but as a person and what it means to be a person of that future. So in the end, even though, it's a bit of a monologue, they have that great speech about not going into darkness and being that better human and being that better person. And so the minute I saw that, it made me, anything else I may not have liked in the most recent Star Trek movie, I loved it. The minute it was sort of about that, being that better human being, that was what made this Star Trek worthwhile to me. You can pick apart so many other things. Why did they go with Khan? Not that they did. I hate to give out a spoiler. It could have been someone else, this John Harrison guy. But this audience knows by now. Go ahead and spoil all you want.
Okay. Well, yes, I think I just did. I really enjoyed it for that reason, and that's all I'll say.
Okay, so again, wrapping it up again, this one kind of tied into the last one we just asked is, which universe will still be around 20 years from now and actually still matter?
That's easy.
I think that's easy too.
Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Oh my God.
No. I'm actually going to say both, like, this is wishful thinking, both should be around. And for the same reasons I've been saying before, that, Star Wars is this, this universe of action adventure, of, self-actualization, of inspiring individuals to really go after their dreams. It has this element that no other science fiction has, and it's nostalgic. And so I think that Star Wars has those elements that Star Trek doesn't have. But also Star Trek should be around because, again, as Rod was saying, this is potentially a vision of our future and reminding us of really important psychological, political, social themes that we cannot forget about. And for that reason, I would actually, this is going to be lame, but I'm going to stand on the border and say we need both.
I agree with you 100%. I'll quickly jump in and say it depends on what JJ does. I have complete faith that he'll do something amazing with Star Wars. But if he, in some way, were to do something that people did not like, it might really harm Star Wars' future. But I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and now before we continue, Rod, I'm going to let you go because you got to take another call. I want to thank you for coming on with us and taking the time to talk Star Trek versus Star Wars.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. My pleasure. And was it, Drea, what was that line again?
Oh, gosh. I think I said that Star Wars helps us to forget and Star Trek makes us remember.
Yes.
Beautiful. That's my takeaway.
So Rod is Roddenbery Entertainment, Roddenbery.com. You guys can go to our link section. It's all in there for you. Find out what's going on with Roddenbery Entertainment. And also, I'm subscribed to the Roddenbery Transmitter. On there was a story. So let me give you the congratulations. You and your wife are expecting your first child. So congratulations on that, Rod.
Aww.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Thank you. Yeah.
And if you haven't already,
I call him Luke or Kirk? I can't decide.
Ooh, you might have to do both.
Let's take a vote.
I think we'll stay away from Star Trek or Star Wars names.
Henry's a nice, strong name, I hear.
There you go.
Yeah. So again, Rod Roddenbery, thanks a lot for coming on, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Rod.
All right. Bye.
Okay, so I'm going to agree. I know we're all agreeing with each other here, but that's what happens. And I think that both will be around. And the end part of that question, and actually matter. I feel like Star Trek has had this thing where, it existed to begin with, and they did, a bunch of the TV shows. And then, to Rod's point, the fan base is getting older, and they're not necessarily adding a whole lot of new until just recently. But, it still has that element. Whereas with Star Wars, we were talking about, we're adding generation after generation, with prequels, with Clone Wars, with now with this whole Disney thing. So I think, and actually matters a funny way to word it, but I think that Star Wars will still have more of a pull 20 years from now.
Yeah, and I think they both still will be around 20 years from now. And I think they actually both will matter. I mean, the only one, Star Trek, not because of like Rod said, not because of something that JJ may do with Star Wars or Star Trek, but because hopefully when we get 20 years from now, when we get closer to that future, it may be more like what Star Trek has shown us. I mean, we already have the smartphones are our version of communicators. Maybe we'll be able to transport from one place to another. Those of you again who live in LA, New York, you're waiting for that because you hate those hour-long commutes every time.
That would be nice.
I needed that yesterday.
Yeah, and also especially, hopefully we will be going where no man has gone before and exploring Mars and Jupiter and beyond. So, will Star Trek be relevant? It might look old by then because we've actually colonized Mars or colonized the moon or something else. But they both add something to the culture, something to technology, obviously, something to who we are as people. I mean, how many times, and Rachel, like you and I have talked about this, how many times do we say just at work, something that comes up, may the force be with you? Even in meetings with CEOs, instead of saying, hey, good luck, hey, may the force be with you, and everybody knows exactly what you mean.
That's right.
On the Star Trek side, same thing. Instead of saying may the force be with you, when you say live long and prosper, everybody knows exactly what that means too. So they're both going to be around, I think so, and they will matter 20 years from now. So that's
there it is.
Star Trek versus Star Wars, or Star Wars versus Star Trek, whichever you prefer. We're going to leave it up to you guys. Again, thanks to Rod for coming on. Andrea, thank you for coming on. But don't go anywhere. We're still going to talk a little bit. I'm going to leave it up for this whole week. You guys decide who made the better points. That AI one is going to be a tough one to judge for you, even for you guys. And we'll, in a week from now, we'll decide who won this one, and we'll let you all know. So this isn't part of the Star Trek versus Star Wars. I just wanted to know. Rod had to go. Dre, I'm assuming you watched Into Darkness this weekend?
I did.
What did you think?
Well, I think in fairness, I probably have to see it again just to kind of process everything that happened. But, kind of to relate back to what I was saying before, there were some moments, and this might be spoiler heavy, but there were some moments that I think were revisited. And they weren't, there were a lot of moments that actually weren't even rewritten much. They were redone, revisited in a way that was a nice nod to Star Trek fans. But I think walking away from that, I felt like not enough of it was creative. It was relying a lot on an emotional appeal, if you will. Like, again, coming from putting on that psychology hat, there is that, if you have seen Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II, with the original Kirk and Spock, that scene at the end, where they have this dialogue and Spock dies, is one of the most emotional, one of the most, I think, groundbreaking, impactful scenes. And I'm going to be honest here, I felt quite manipulated to reuse that scene, like maybe do it in a different way, but to reuse that scene today, to me, as a fan, as an audience member, I just felt emotionally manipulated. I did not feel that it was authentic. I felt that it was a smart re-envision of it, but I think I would have appreciated something a little bit more creative and new.
I'm going to agree with you on that point as well. Like, I felt it was a little forced, and I am one that I love the nods to the fans. You know what I mean? I'm the one cheering, saying, yes, thank you, and that kind of thing. But I felt the same way, kind of like, okay, like, we have to do this. It's kind of cool because it's referencing, but whatever. But I had a friend yesterday tell me that scene was their favorite part of the new movie, that it made them cry in the theater, that it impacted them so much that they want to see it again because they want to cry again. So here we go. Here's the end of the spectrum again. Some of us are like, okay, whatever. And some of them, the new ones that maybe, aren't referencing as much of the original as we are going, oh my God, that was such an emotional connection.
This friend of yours, is it a he or a she?
Does it matter?
Gender does not matter, Henry. I don't know why you're going there.
I just want to say, I just want to address him or her correctly. Has he or she, did she watch, or she watched the original Wrath of Khan?
It's a good question.
He has. So.
What?
I don't know. I don't know how long ago it was, but yeah.
Well, see, because, and Rachel, you and I talked about it. As a matter of fact, last night, Rachel texted me and said, what are the plans for today's show? And I said, I'll tell you in a second because I'm walking out of Star Trek Into Darkness. I had to see it twice. The first time, and, I revealed a week ago, I had actually seen it, with journalists, so it wasn't the same impact as with us, with our people. When I went on Friday night to watch it, I knew it was coming, obviously, but I watched the crowd's reaction more than anything, and it's turned into the episode 3 moment, when the con moment, Spock's con moment. My theater was half and half, and I judge the audience when the theater starts. If they start cheering because the Bad Robot logo comes on, I know I'm with the right audience. I didn't have that on Friday night, but they did cheer. They did, laugh at the right moments. That one, there were a couple of giggles in front, and but the theater was silent when that happened.
Oh, that's awkward.
Yeah, and to me, what I thought of Star Trek Into Darkness, the reason why I had to see it twice is because the first time, technically the second time, but the first time I saw it, I was disappointed with the whole thing because you remember, Rachel, we had Nicholas Meyer on a couple of times. The last time he was on, the rumors were already going around. It's going to be Khan. It's going to be Khan. I asked him, if they do redo Wrath of Khan, how would you feel? And he was being funny. He said, "Oh, I hope not intellectually," but he's a good friend and big fan of JJ. So am I. No secret. I would expect more, not just JJ, but Damon Lindelof, Kurtzman, and Orky, and all of them, to be more creative than that. The beauty of the 2009 Star Trek was you could take it anywhere you want. Right. Why would you touch the Empire Strikes Back of the Star Trek movies and redo that one and almost, what do you call it? Phrase for phrase, line for line, scene for scene.
You know what?
Just switch a couple of characters.
It's a fine line because, like we were just saying before, there's people that want the reference, to the originals, and there's people that want the new, and it goes back and forth. And no matter what JJ did, people would be angry. Just like no matter what Lucas did with the prequels, people were going to be angry.
But that's exactly what Drea was saying. Is that's putting that scene in there is like taking a big bat that has reference printed on it and hitting you over the head with it. It's like, hello, here it is.
I wonder, Henry, do you think that they assumed that the people that knew the reference would, feel sort of would cheer and feel grateful, and that there would be more audience members that actually didn't know about this? I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of it.
Well,
that this scene is like new to them.
I think they were going for kind of like what Rod mentioned in one of the answers a few minutes ago. They're trying to get the younger audience in here, and they're assuming that Paramount also obviously is assuming that younger audience probably has seen Wrath of Khan somewhere, but it didn't have the same impact that it did on like my generation, and so they're giving them that. And I honestly, it's kind of like a slap in the face to me, because I've been there, I've been a fan all this time, and it's kind of like in comic books when the New 52 started, and now the Marvel Now movement. It's kind of like the fans that have been there from day one. All of a sudden, okay, everything that forget it because you're old, and now we're gonna go with the new shiny audience that we have over here. It's kind of what I got from Star Trek Into Darkness.
That's fair.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you now.
And the other thing also is, I was telling Rachel right before we started recording the show, I could almost see the moment where, because the movie started out fine. I mean, the plot is nothing at all like Wrath of Khan at all in the beginning.
Right.
But when it gets to the point where, what's his name, RoboCop, Admiral Marcus, sends Kirk out to get Khan, or we don't know he's Khan yet, but to get Khan.
Right.
It almost seems you can almost hear that was the day JJ walked in and said, "Hey, we got Star Wars. Who cares about this? Let's just go paint by numbers, get it done, and let's go on." That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, what I felt like when I walked out of that was, I mean, don't get me wrong, if you haven't seen this movie and you're still listening,
it's great. Yeah,
it's a fun action-packed movie. I was in awe. I mean, visually, it's so fantastic. The story, even though I know that it's taking components of an original story and kind of reimagining it, and these are characters that already exist, blah, blah, blah. This is still a fantastic movie. It's still worth seeing in the theaters. It's still, a geek movie if people are worried that, it's sold out or whatever. It's
still a good experience.
Yes, it's a fantastic story. It's a fantastic movie in terms of all that stuff. But, I walked out thinking this is Star Trek as written by a Star Wars fan. Like I was entertained and I had fun and I was, enjoying all the space battles and the explosions and the fun characters. And that to me has that Star Wars feeling, not that Star Trek feeling. So
and that is why Star Wars wins.
Woohoo!
Good job, Drea.
Yes.
Well, I mean, honestly, let me ask you this, you two especially, because you are big Star Wars fans. Now, having seen Into Darkness, how do you feel about what may be coming in 2015?
I'm excited. I mean, I was excited before when it was JJ, but regardless, we were just kind of on the negative end with this last movie for Star Trek. I'm actually really, really excited. It was gorgeous. It took a movie that was action after action after action and still pulled story along with it. There was excessive lens flares and I liked it. I'm really excited, and there better be Tatooine suns with dual lens flares or I'm going to be really upset.
Yeah, I'm actually staying away from reading too much about what's coming up with the new Star Wars movie, and trying not to get too, I guess, like I don't want to get wrapped up in the drama of who's on board and who's not and what's the story going to be. But I'm excited too. I think that it's promising. I mean, if you just take a baseline, this last Star Trek movie was really great, and I think that this means really great things for Star Wars. On the other hand, I maybe just have this in the back of my mind, just this little concern that there may be too much of the kind of the fan nods of Star Wars, that it may overtake the really good story that should be told. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's just a minor concern. That's in the back
it's valid. And as a huge huge fan, obviously, all of you guys know. And as someone being really into what the story is going to be, and I've read the expanded universe, and I already know where we're going, I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm confident that the story is going to be good.
See, and again, I gotta also say this, and Dre, I shouldn't have to make an appointment with you, but I think I gotta go multiple personalities on this, and I see Into Darkness as first as a Star Trek fan, and then just as a movie fan, just a plain regular movie fan. As a Star Trek fan, a little disappointing, a little insulting, quite honestly. But as a movie fan, that's how I saw it last night when I went again, because I threw everything out, all the Wrath of Khan and everything. I threw everything out and just went in there and saw it as a movie. Phenomenal movie. It's something that I would want to watch over, kind of like the Avengers, not as fun, but same kind of nonstop action. And when it does pause, it actually has a reason that it's moving the story along, and then we get to the next set piece. So
right,
great movie. But again, as a Star Trek fan, kind of disappointing. As a Star Trek fan and as a JJ fan, JJ Damon, Drea, you said a minute ago, and it's true. We're not just saying that just to say it. They are Star Wars guys, no big secret. JJ, huge Star Wars fan. Damon Lindelof, same thing. The only Star Trek fan there is Orci, Roberto Orci. He's one of the writers. Kurtzman is a big Star Wars fan. But he's educated them on what Star Trek is all about. But it's still kind of Star Warsian kind of Star Trek, and again, as a Star Trek fan, kind of insulting that kind of like with comic book, with the New 52 and the Marvel Now movements that are going on now, kind of the same thing, and I hear it every Wednesday when I go get comic books. I hear the conversations with the people there. Well, I guess they don't care about me. They don't want me as customers anymore, and a lot of them actually have stopped buying the comic books because of that. And I'm afraid that, I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm afraid that JJ may be doing that to old Star Trek fans who've been there from the 60s, even like Rod mentioned, and he's gonna alienate them with this new Star Trek, or whoever takes over once JJ moves over to Star Wars.
I don't know. I think the fans, the diehards are going to be diehards, and the wishy-washy people aren't going to care. And either way, both of them are going to be around, and I'm excited for episode 7.
Yeah, aren't we all? Honestly, and like I said, I've said it many times, I'm an equal opportunity fanboy with both Star Wars and Star Trek. I know about warp nacelles, and I also know about the Corellian blood stripe on Han's pants. So I'm there. I'm there for both. So there you go. That's our Star Trek versus Star Wars special. Thanks again to Rod Roddenberry, CEO of Roddenbery Entertainment, roddenberry.com. You guys can go on there and find out what's going on. A lot of things happening. He's got something with the 1701. Go on there. It's right on the homepage. You'll find out what that is. And again, congratulations to him and his wife Heidi. They're expecting their first son, who they're probably going to name Henry. I said this is strong.
And a big thanks to Drea for being on my team.
Yes.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to hang out with you guys and chat about all things geek.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're actually a real doctor. You're also, this is what makes you the real geek, you're actually Barbara Gordon's psychologist. Who else can say that?
Yes, I am. So, folks, if you haven't checked out Batgirl number 16, or actually, as of last week, Batgirl number 20, I do appear as sort of as myself, as a clinical psychologist who's treating Barbara Gordon in, what we would consider Gotham City's best mental health facility. And I don't want to give too much away, but if you haven't checked it out, it's really, it's entertaining. But I also say it's a really, I'm grateful and so thankful to Gail Simone, who's written me into this comic book, into this major DC comic title, but also to really represent and write mental health treatment in such a realistic, way that I simply cannot say thanks enough to DC Comics and to Gail for doing that.
And speaking of the best mental facility, at Arkham Asylum Doc, you guys follow her adventures there. I was telling Rachel, you guys are almost clones of each other there, because every other tweet is, "I look what I got from her universe," and that's what I kept telling you. You got to be friends with her. She's just like you. So you guys can follow her adventures there at Arkham Asylum Doc on Twitter. And you will have a lot of fun reading those tweets. I guarantee it. So again, Drea and Rod, he had to go, but Rod, he can hear me also. Thanks for coming on. You guys are welcome back anytime to talk Star Trek, Star Wars, anything you want. Like you said, Drea, just geek out with us.
Thanks.
So now it's in you guys' hands. You guys decide who made the better points. Was it Team Trek, Rod Roddenberry, myself, or was it Team Wars, Rachel and Drea? you guys decide again, like I said, and send us an email. Got a couple of special emails just for this show. If you think Rod and myself made the better points, send your email to trek@thegeekspeakshow.com. If you thought Drea and Rachel made the better points, send it to wars@thegeekspeakshow.com. Pretty simple. And just, you don't have to give us your name or anything. And just your email name will suffice because it's on there anyway. But go ahead and send it on there. We'll have Joel be the unbiased judge, tally it up. And next week, they'll tell you exactly who won. Star Trek or Star Wars? Next week, Joel will be here. I'm going to take a break just because I need one. Rachel's going to take a break also just because she needs one also. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Next week, it will be Joel and our new comics commentator, Mark Doris. He'll do more than commentate on comics. He'll probably do that too. But he'll talk about some other stuff, some other cool geek things going on, whatever that is. I think there's a movie about Earth and has Will Smith and his son. They'll probably talk about that. One of the Smiths will probably come on the show. So as we say every week, Rachel and I we'll be back in a couple of weeks. But Joel and Mark Doors, if they were here, they'd say, come on back next week and we'll speak more geek. See ya.
The Geek Speak Show will be back next week with a brand new episode. In the meantime, follow them on Twitter @GeekSpeakShow1. That's the number 1. Become a fan on Facebook. Subscribe on iTunes. Watch special event coverage and the Geek Speak video show on YouTube/GeekSpeakVideos. And listen to past shows in the archive section on thegeekspeakshow.com. A big thank you to the Geek Speak Show's content providers, GeekTyrant.com, Collider.com, RamaScreen.com, and MightyVille.com.